in this video lecture, we're going to discuss the Fed's dual mandate, as well as what monetary policy looks like on the aggregate demand, aggregate supply graph. The Fed's overall goal is to comply with the dual mandate that was given to it by Congress in 1977. That dual mandate says that the Fed's main objectives should be to help the economy to achieve full employment and stable prices. To do that, the Fed targets the goal of achieving full employment, which is an unemployment rate between 4% and 5%, while at the same time maintaining a target rate of inflation, which is currently set around 2% per year. The targets are determined by the Fed based on the current economic conditions. So the Fed will be more likely to use a restrictive monetary policy if the actual inflation rate is above the target rate or the actual unemployment rate falls below the target rate. And they will be more inclined to use an expansionary monetary policy if the actual inflation is below the target rate or the unemployment rate is above the target. This chart shows you the dual mandate. So there's a trade-off between inflation and the unemployment rate in general. Their goal is to stay right here in the middle of this bullseye, where inflation is about 2% and the unemployment rate is between 4 and 5%. The closer they are to the middle, then the closer they are to achieving their dual mandate. You can see where the economy was in March of 2019, and obviously when COVID hit in 2020, then we flew way off to the right side of this chart. At that point, the unemployment rate was well into the double digits. In an earlier chapter, we discussed the federal funds rate. That's the interest rate that banks charge each other on overnight loans. The Fed does not have direct control over what the banks choose to charge each other for loans, but they do have an indirect effect on the federal funds rate. The Fed, through the use of open market operations, can change the amount of excess reserves at the banks. And excess reserves are the same thing as federal funds. So the Federal Reserve has control over the supply curve for federal funds. So if they shift the supply of excess reserves or federal funds, they can increase or decrease the federal funds rate. Now we're going to apply what we've learned so far about monetary policy and see how it affects the aggregate demand, aggregate supply graph. This is a multi-step process that goes through the market for money, the investment market, the aggregate demand curve, and then eventually GDP and the price level will change. We will look at a slide in a minute that has all of the steps listed. For the main gist, you want to know that expansionary monetary policy means that the Federal Reserve is increasing the money supply. This is going to increase aggregate demand, which increases GDP and the price level. If the Federal Reserve is using restrictive monetary policy, that means they are decreasing the money supply. This will decrease aggregate demand and in effect will decrease real GDP and the price level. The first thing that happens in this chain of events happens in the supply and demand for money. So this is the graph that we looked at the very beginning of this chapter. We said that the supply of money, that's dependent upon the Fed, generally when they're using open market operations. When they change the supply of money, it will change the interest rate in the economy. So if we start at this first supply of money line here, we can see that the interest rate is 10%. If the Fed increases the supply of money, that would push the supply curve over to the right. This new equilibrium point with the demand of money decreased the interest rates. So the first link in the chain is that if the Fed increases the supply of money, then interest rates will fall. And we are here looking at expansionary monetary policy. So expansionary monetary policy means that the Fed is increasing the money supply. The next link in the chain is the change in investment due to the change in interest rates. We first learned about this relationship back in chapter 10. If interest rates fall, then the amount of investment will increase. And we can see that happening on this investment demand graph here. So if interest rates move from 10% to 8%, then investment in the economy moves from 15 billion to 20 billion. So the Fed is using expansionary monetary policy. This is increasing the money supply, which decreases the interest rate, which increases the level of investment in the economy. The next step that happens is when there's an increase in the investment level, this increases aggregate demand. Remember, aggregate demand is C plus I plus G plus XN. So I is the level of investment in the economy. If that's increasing, aggregate demand is increasing. So on this graph, we're looking at our aggregate demand, aggregate supply graph. Let's say we started here at AD2, where the investment level is 20 billion. If investment increases to 25 billion, the entire aggregate demand curve will shift to the right. When aggregate demand shifts to the right, notice what happens to GDP and the price level. GDP is at the bottom of this graph. We can see that GDP increased. Here we have the price level on the vertical axis. As we move from this equilibrium AD2 to a higher equilibrium AD3, the price level is increasing. So with expansionary monetary policy, then both GDP and the price level will increase. You can also remember when GDP increases that the unemployment in the country will be falling. Here you can see all of the steps together when the Fed uses expansionary monetary policy. First of all, there's a problem in the economy. Specifically, there's high unemployment and a recession. The Fed is going to choose one of their 4 or 5 tools to increase the money supply. They can buy bonds, lower the reserve ratio, lower the discount rate, reduce the interest rate on excess reserve, or use repos. Any of these tools will increase the money supply. You can see that step here. The money supply increases because there's excess reserves at the bank. So each of these tools will increase excess reserves. This increases the money supply. When the money supply increases, interest rates all around the economy will be falling. This includes the federal funds rate and other interest rates. As interest rates fall, investment spending increases, which increases aggregate demand. And as aggregate demand increases, then real GDP will increase, which fixes the problem of the recession and the unemployment. We can also see the effect of increasing inflation in the economy. Now, if the Fed wants to use restrictive monetary policy, they're going to do that in times of inflation. And restrictive monetary policy means that they're going to decrease the money supply. To decrease the money supply, they can use one of their tools. They can sell bonds, they can increase the reserve ratio, increase the discount rate, increase the interest on excess reserves, or use reverse repos. Each of these will decrease the amount of excess reserves at the banks, decrease lending, and therefore decrease the money supply. As the money supply falls, interest rates across the economy will increase. So we'll see increases in the federal funds rate as well as increases in interest rates around the economy. As interest rates rise, then investment spending will fall. And if investment spending is falling, that means that aggregate demand will be decreasing as well. When aggregate demand decreases, this will fix the inflation problem. So we'll see decreases in inflation or potentially deflation. But remember that we have inflexible prices. So we'll probably pull inflation down lower, but not get rid of it completely. Now we're going to discuss some of the positives and negatives to monetary policy. Some of the biggest positives of monetary policy, reasons why we would want to use monetary policy as opposed to fiscal policy. First, because it's much faster and more flexible. There is a very low administrative lag in monetary policy compared to fiscal policy. And that's because the Board of Governors can have an emergency meeting on any day and that same day start initiating open market operations to fix the problem. This is in comparison to fiscal policy. Remember, fiscal policy is changes in government spending or changes in taxes. This is something that needs to be voted on by Congress. So there's a very long administrative lag for fiscal policy. The second advantage to monetary policy is that it's isolated from political pressure. So remember we talked about how the Federal Reserve is an independent organization. It's run by economists and bankers who are doing their best to stabilize the economy. They are not waiting for an election to get re-elected. That means we do not see the same kind of swings that we see in fiscal policy that happen during the election years. The third advantage is that monetary is more subtle than fiscal policy. That means that we can fine-tune it and really get it as accurate as we can, versus fiscal policy is more like shoving the demand curve in the general direction that we want it to go. So we cannot be nearly as precise with fiscal policy as we can with monetary policy. Now let's talk about the problems with monetary policy. Similar to fiscal policy, there is going to be some lag time. The recognition lag time and the operational lag time are true with both monetary and fiscal policy. The second problem is cyclical asymmetry. This means that restrictive monetary policy is more effective than expansionary monetary policy. In other words, the Fed is much more effective at controlling inflation than it is at helping the economy recover from a severe recession. The last problem is called a liquidity trap. And this means that the tools that the Fed uses to increase the money supply are not always as effective as they hope that they could be. And that is because the Fed can increase the amount of excess reserves at the banks, but they cannot force the banks to lend out their excess reserves. So this was a big problem when we were recovering from the Great Recession. The Fed significantly increased the money supply and increased the amount of excess reserves at banks all over the country, but the banks were reluctant to lend out that money. And so the money supply didn't actually change as much as they hoped that it would. This actually explains why the Fed's expansionary monetary policy is less effective than their restrictive monetary policy. The Fed has been very active in changing the money supply recently, especially after the Great Recession and during the recession that was caused by COVID. The Federal Reserve jumped right in both cases to use their tools to increase the money supply to help the economy come out of the recessions. In both recessions, the Federal Reserve has come up with some new tools that they've never used before, apart from the 5 that we talked about in this chapter. And we're still waiting to see how effective those tools were and if they were really a good idea or not. And there's lots of debate about that. To end, I want to look at the big picture of everything we've been studying so far this semester. So in Unit 1, we were really in just an introduction to economics. But everything since then, we've been focusing on the big picture or macroeconomics. So to start with, we looked at aggregate demand, starting with solving for GDP, looking at the 4 different groups of spenders. So our consumption, our households, the investment, that's our businesses, the net exports, that's our foreigners, and our government spending. And this turned into our aggregate expenditures and our aggregate demand. We also looked at economic growth and how a country can grow their GDP over time. And they can do that with increases in resources, increases in the productivity or the quality of their resources, as well as government regulation or increases in their technology. And that information actually turned into our aggregate supply. When we put the two together, aggregate demand and aggregate supply, we saw the results in the level of our output or GDP, the unemployment rates in the country, the income of the nation, and the price level in the nation. We also looked at fiscal policy, which is how the federal government or Congress can affect aggregate demand and thereby affect the GDP and the price level, and they do that through changes in government spending or taxes. And then in this last unit, we looked at monetary policy, which is how the Federal Reserve can change aggregate demand and thereby change GDP and the price level as well. And there is the whole course of macroeconomics summarized up into one big picture.